Hails and welcome to Rauta's opinion video, more like a pondering. What happened to certain festivals and why they ceased to exist like proper metal ones? This time I'm gonna use Tuska festival from Finland as an example. This is not, by no means, as a disclaimer, an attack towards the festival, more like pondering, could this the same thing happen to a lot of festivals? And mind you, obviously there are similarities, and of course there are always some other festivals which went really the different way. But I'll use Tuska, especially Tuska 25, as an example because of that festival I have quite a bit of experience, and I'm gonna show you, or more like tell you, how things have changed over the years. And let's ponder about that. What is changing, what could be changing, and how things have changed so far. Those of you who know what Tuska is the biggest metal festival in Finland, and started as early as 1998, if I'm not mistaken. The very first Tuska actually had headliners like Gorgoroth and a lot of smaller bands, but it was mostly like death metal, thrash metal, black metal, what have you. Point is, most on the extreme metal side. Obviously, there have always been some lighter, the mainstream metal acts and so forth. And pretty quickly, Tuska started to, grow and change. And there has been all different kinds of metal throughout the years. But it's also been known for having the death metal and the black metal bands and so forth from, places around the world. And years before things like Steelfest, for example, exist, or not to mention Helsinki Metal Fest and all that stuff. Meaning they had bands like Behemoth, or Vader for that matter, Barathrum for Finnish black metal scene, and so forth. But ever since 2019, which was the last year Tuska happened before COVID, obviously, it was headlined by bands like Slayer, Dimmu Borgir, Anthrax, etc. I was really stoked about it, like seeing Slayers with the farewell tour and all. And like I said, I've been many times to Tuska because it has had a lot of really great bands over the decades. However, something changed with COVID, and there has been speculation back and forth who made these changes. Was it a new owner? Because Tuska eventually, a few years ago, went under a different ownership and all that stuff. But people have been reassuring, no, same people still decide the bands and all that stuff. And what is curious enough that even though Tuska's focus point has changed from metal, and even more so from extreme metal towards more mainstream metal, even rock and a lot of metalcore acts, and then acts outside metal altogether, including folk and synthwave, and, well, I'll show you. The thing here is, people have been speculating what's going on, but despite of all these changes, or maybe because of it, it's been selling, more than ever. So it seems like towards the more mainstream it goes, the more tickets it sells. But in the end, metal audience is not too happy about it. Let's take a look at that, seeing the lineup for 25 so far. So you see In Flames. Yes, you can call it metal, obviously, but it's not really the thing that it was back in the 90s, changing later on to Mallcore and whatnot. Then you have Lorna Shore, which was on Tuska like 2 years ago. Yeah, deathcore, one of the biggest names. Kind of easy to see why it's there. But then you have bands like Electric Cowboy. You have these things like, Nothing More. Bad Wolves. Remember how they became, big, having a cover of a, say, rock pop band. You have acts like, well, Alcest you can kind of understand. And you have these things which are not really metal. I mean, I'm obviously browsing through some of the stuff, skipping them, because the more obvious ones don't really need mention. They are metal and they kind of belong to Tuska. And then you are like, okay, we're at real cool metal acts. And then you're like, there are not too many. Sure, you could say, yeah, but they have Korpiklaani and Insomnium from Finland. That's construct metal. Yeah, but you pretty much see them everywhere else. And when you really think about it, the extreme metal, it's like non-existent. Yeah, you could go for a Lorna Shore point once again. They are very extreme with their deathcore. Yes, they are. They are very extreme in terms of any kind of core. But look at the list for black metal, death metal, thrash metal. Yeah, it's not exactly there. So pretty much the things have changed. Sure, there are some younger talents like Duranti, which are more their speed heavy metal thing going on and all that stuff. But for every, metal act here, you have some kind of a folk act like Avar. And overall, this list is more like what happened to Tuska? Now, I know some people are stoked and some people are already saying, like, yeah, Tuska is not meant for people over 30. Maybe it's true, but if that's the true, why would people care about Marko Hietala or Tarja, not to mention Timo Rauten and Niskalaukos in the first place? So it's kind of a curious combination because it's not really metal and all. And while some of these acts are definitely debatable, see the difference when I was mentioning bands like Behemoth or Vader or Barathrum or Slayer, Dimmu Borgir, fucking Emperor for that matter, Morbid Angel, At the Gates, Enslaved, all those acts which I got to see throughout the years. I mean, I even made quite a few interviews at Tuska around 2017, 2018, and so forth. And like I said, I've been there since the late 90s when it started. Now, obviously, Tuska isn't the only one. There's an ongoing, and to many people, annoying joke about Turku, my home city's local festival, Ruis Rock, which has been here since the 70s. And people are pointing out it's not rock anymore, because it's not. I mean, it's been a dance / pop / hip hop festival for a long time. But go backtracking like maybe early 2000s, or at least go to the 90s, and you will see it was really a rock or even metal infested festival. So what I see is like pretty much what happened to Ruis Rock, changing from rock and even borderline metal festival from something very more mainstreamish and danceable, hip-hopish, whatever kind of stuff is basically happened to Tuska as well, which started as an extreme metal festival, expanded into mainstream territory, can't bitch about that really, and then started to kind of sell itself to the more mainstreamish audience. I mean, when it's about business, and mind you, this is not, just handing out people happy things. It is a festival that is about to make profit, right? So it's business. From business point of view, this totally makes sense. But as a metal fan, I can't stop, complaining because it kind of annoys me. Now, there are some examples like Nummerok, which went very, very different direction. It was more like a basic, borderline, boring, rock festival back in the days, until it actually started bringing heavier and heavier acts. Including bands like, say, Pantera, Slayer back in the 90s. I think Danzig played there. Morbid Angel surely did. And later on, they have moved towards, black metal and death metal, including bands like Hornai and so forth throughout the years. So it's almost like if those guys started here, extreme metal, or maybe the underground section, which is going up and, changing towards more mainstream acts and less heavy, less extreme, and so forth. Nummerok has been going to the different directions. So maybe these movements, for the lack of a better word, actually happen to both directions. Now, I'm curious to see how the things will happen because Tuska in fact is owned by one of the biggest corporations which actually organizes a lot of other festivals around the world. So when you start figuring out from the business sense of view, it actually makes sense. So because they have this festival there and another festival here and that one in Finland, let's do some booking and organizing and blah, blah, blah to make even more profit. So metal is being sold. That's not really a news here. But for metal fans who are like, hey, Tuska used to be the place where we gather around, have some drinks and all that stuff. And now it's for the different kind of audience. It's almost like some kind of a passing the torch has happened. So whereas Tuska went more mainstream and more rock and roll, I mean, just check out a couple of years, 2023, 2024 for Tuska lineup, and you see this 2025 lineup is not really exceptional. Already past 2 years, I was like, what the hell is happening? I mean, for me, last Tuska was 2019, and then there was 2 years pause, and when they came back 2022, I think, I was like, what the hell is happening? This isn't really the festival I used to go. It's almost like something permanently changed with COVID changes. Now, Helsinki Metal Festival took place the first time last year. I couldn't go, unfortunately, but there were already lots of interesting bands. Almost like combining some of the best bands from Tuska and meriting to some acts from Steelfest, like bands like Impel Nazarene, which you could imagine to see back in the days in Tuska, but not anymore. You surely saw some of those names back in the days at Steelfest, and you still could see some of those names at Steelfest. And now they are happening at Helsinki Metal Festival. So in a way, it seems like Tuska is passing the torch. Yeah, we're not going to hand out anymore those extreme metal bands. Here you are, take the torch and move on. So in a way, I guess the blessing in disguise is when Tuska went more mainstream and less metal, to be honest, it kind of a paved the way for Helsinki Metal Festival, which is not that different, but also quite different from Numero. So while I'm here talking about Finnish perspective, obviously these similar things are happening all around the world when festivals and their promoters or organizations in general are figuring out how to redefine themselves. I mean, I wouldn't really be surprised if some of the bigger fests, and these get good for European or American fest, decided like, okay, let's ditch death metal and trash metal altogether. It's not selling that well. Let's just take more core bands, the metal cores, the death cores, or whatever. So you can just move along and start skipping the old trash metal bands and that stuff because they don't really sell. You just pick a little bit Satyricon for there, a little bit Cradle Field, a little bit Dimmu Borgir and say, yeah, we got your black metal covered. And then you bring the Lorna Shores and other, metalcore names with multiple words in a one sentence kind of a names, and you put them all in the same bag, and they're like, there's a little bit for everybody. And the extreme metal fans are like, no, not really, nothing for me. So I don't know, things are changing. Like I said, this is not so much about Tuska as an individual thing, even though you're here using it as an example, but saying that the world is changing with the current trends. So whoever said that metal is not trendy, I kind of beg to disagree, because in fact that's what the organizations, the festivals, are really essentially doing. Now, a question for you, dear audience, if you made this far, or you just decided to take the last part of the whole video. Do you have experience of your favorite festivals becoming something else? Do you have been into festivals which used to be cool but are not really cool anymore? Let me know. Let's discuss about that if there are enough cool, good examples of those festivals. And also, what festivals are you looking for year 2025? I do know some of the festivals I'm looking for, and I will be discussing them later on with you, dear Rauta audience, and looking forward to do some interviews and coverage out of those festivals. Let's talk about that later on. Meanwhile, off you go.